Welcome to the Real Estate Sessions, and join industry leaders as they share their stories and offer tips and advice to real estate professionals. Now your host, Bill Risser of Chicago Title, Arizona.
So today's guest in our first episode is the closest I could get to Dave Letterman's first guest, which was Bill Murray. Well, in the real estate space, I'm going to call that Jay Thompson. So I've known Jay since 2009, maybe 2008, when he was running Thompson's Realty, which was actually less than a half of a mile from my branch location with Chicago Title. So he was already 4 years into the PhoenixRealEstateGuy.com, which turned out to be a wildly popular real estate blog. Jay, in my opinion, belongs on the Mount Rushmore of real estate blogging pioneers. He was one of the first to get it and understand what it would do. In 2012, Jay was hired by Zillow to be a part of their social media team. His title now is Director of Industry Outreach, and he spends a whole lot of time online talking to realtors. So Jay, thank you so much for tearing yourself away from the internet to spend a few minutes with us.
Sure, Bill. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
No problem. So let's start off with some basic stuff about you. Maybe everybody doesn't know your backstory. How long have you been in the real estate space, we'll call it?
I got licensed, first got my sales license in Arizona in 2004. So what is that, 11 years now?
Okay, so you're not one of those 30-year old timers. You're a relative newcomer to the business.
Yep.
Okay, and what did you do then? You had to have a career before you were in real estate, because I happen to know how old you are. So what did you do before real estate?
I was in the semiconductor manufacturing industry, basically manufacturing computer chips. And I did that for 20 years and then some. The last stint in that was as a HR manager, and for the last 3 years as an HR manager, all I did was shut down factories and lay people off, which is not why I got into human resources. I got into HR to help people, and then the semiconductor industry is insane. It's crazy. It's very cyclical. There was a big giant downturn, so we shut down all these factories and laid people off. And as I'm sitting with my fellow HR professionals, we looked at each other and we said, when we're done with all these factory closures, we're getting laid off. And to make a long story short, that indeed happened. And I looked over at my wife after we got the layoff. I got a really nice severance package from my employer, about 2 years of pay. And I looked at Francie and I said, I don't ever want to work in corporate America again. What are we going to do? And we had some friends that were in real estate and had been for a couple of years and were doing well with it. So we thought, well, we can live for 2 years on my severance package, so let's give it a shot. And that's what I did. Got licensed. 3 years after I got my sales license, I got my broker's license. And 2 days after I got my broker's license, I opened Thompson's Realty.
Excellent. So it really was, it was kind of your just kind of distaste for what happened there that once kind of turned you into an entrepreneur, really, right?
Yeah, it was. 20 years is a long time to spend in corporate America. It was a very big company, very bureaucratic, and, the whole shutting down factories. And I personally exited 3,500 some odd people. Wasn't a very pleasant experience. So I was a bit turned off to corporate America, and it seemed like real estate offered everything we were looking for: independence, freedom, entrepreneurship. You get out of it what you put into it. The harder you work, the more you make. Lots of freedom in some ways, and so that's what we went with, and it worked out pretty well.
You said exited, right? Is that what you called it when you let people go?
Yeah, we exited them. We fired them.
Gotcha. Just want to clear that up.
Yeah, it was horrible because I had grown men that had been employed with the company for 35 years. They're crying at my desk saying, what am I going to do? And all I could say was, I don't know. Here's your box. Go pack your stuff and I'll walk you out. It was awful.
Okay, so let's leave that in the past. Let's talk about then. You start your real estate career, and did you end up starting with kind of a big national brokerage then?
I did. I said that we had some friends that were in real estate, and they were with a Century 21 broker in Mesa. So we went and talked to him. We really liked him. Super good guy. He and the broker and the office manager had been in real estate forever. Clearly, my wife and I knew nothing about selling real estate, so it was a good fit because he was a good mentor. And we did that for 3 years. The whole time, from the day I got my sales license, my intent was to open my own brokerage. And that's what happened. In Arizona, you have to be licensed, have a sales license for 3 years before you can get your broker's license. And that's what we did. So we started up Thompson's Realty. Originally, it was going to be my wife and I and our friend that originally took us to Century 21. And within 2 days, actually probably within 2 hours of posting on the blog that Thompson's Realty was open for business, I had agents calling me saying they wanted to come work with us. So I looked at Francie and I said, what are we going to do? We hadn't talked about hiring agents. It was just going to kind of be almost a sole proprietorship. And so we decided, we winged it, and we hired several agents. And you probably remember there were many times where I said, I'm never going to have more than 10 agents. And then I think I said, I'm never going to have more than 20 agents. And then I probably said, I'm never going to have more than 25 agents. We wound up with 32 agents at one point.
Right. Going back a little bit to when you first started, was there a mentor? Was it the broker at C21, or was there somebody else that was that person that got you going? Because it's not an easy thing to just do on your own.
It's not. The broker was really good at teaching us the ins and out of, for lack of better terms, processing the paperwork. He still wasn't the best at helping with prospecting and securing clients and things like that that are obviously super critical to be successful in real estate. I mean, he was very, very good as a broker, and he ran the office very well, but he just didn't have the bandwidth to take somebody, totally under his wing. So to be honest, I got as much information as I could from senior agents in the office, but they were busy. They didn't have a whole lot of time. A lot of it was self-taught. I taught myself a lot on the internet, and plus being in human resources, I think, was a kind of a natural segue in some ways into real estate, because obviously HR is a very people-oriented thing, and real estate is a very people-oriented business. So it was a help. I mean, I at least knew professionally how to deal with people and handle conflict and all those things that an typical HR manager does. If you think about it, there's a whole lot of parallels with real estate. I still didn't know much about getting clients, and that's where the internet came into play.
Yeah, let's talk about that internet thing. So in 2005, you decide to start blogging about real estate. How many real estate blogs did you find if you did a little research? How many were out there?
Yeah, I did a lot of research because I'd been a blogger for a couple of years, kind of when blogs first came out on the internet and everybody had a personal journal as a blog. I did that. So I was used to the systems. And so I started poking around. I have a love for writing, and I said, you know what, this internet thing is going to be huge. And I have a love for writing, so I should be able to marry those two things into a real estate blog and generate some business from it. So I went to my friend the Google and started looking around. And in 2005, it was not easy to find a real estate blog. The first one I found was Rain City Guide, which oddly enough is based in Seattle, still exists. And then I started finding a few more. Phoenix Real Estate Guide was not the first real estate blog, but I'll bet it was one of the first 50, first 25. There just weren't a lot of real estate blogs out there. But I did find a few, and we were all experimenting. Nobody really knew how this was going to work. And we winged it a lot, and I wrote a lot. And it probably took a good year before it really started to take off. And that's because I finally figured out that it's all about the content. You have to have not just good content, but a fairly significant amount of it. And once I really started pounding out the content pieces, that's when the blog started to take off.
So tell me what you mean by starting to take off. Let's talk about some of the numbers that Phoenix Real Estate Guide started generating, say a year into the
well, you're asking me to go back a long time. Well, traffic started to grow. Okay, it was always just kind of flat, and it was very low in the beginning. I mean, it was me reading it and my mom occasionally, and a few other people that just happened to stumble across it. But as it started to gain traction, as I started to increase the content output, Google started to notice it. And at the same time, I was self-teaching myself search engine optimization. And it took about a year to start being successful. And by successful, I mean the phone started to ring and emails started to show up in the inbox from people coming from the site wanting information about real estate. It started to generate leads, basically.
Okay.
I don't remember the number of leads in the first year, but really by the end of the second year, at that time we were about a year away from being able to open our brokerage. And that's about when it started. I started to look, and I looked at Francie and I said, I'm just throwing a lot of these leads away because I don't have time. I got enough leads to where I could cherry pick. But I figured we were probably leaving a lot of potential revenue on the table because I just couldn't respond to a lot of those leads. And then we started thinking, well, maybe as part of our brokerage, we have two friends that we were going to work with, and we said we can supply them some of these leads. And then once we opened the brokerage, I think one of the reasons that agents contacted us was because they saw our web presence, so that attracted them to the brokerage. And year after year after year, the lead volume was increasing, and we finally had enough at one point to where we were feeding leads to 30 agents at a pretty decent clip. There were several of our agents that was really their sole source of clients was blog leads, which is not really advisable, but that's just the way it worked out. So the last year that the blog was active, which was to take the full year before I started at Zillow, we had 8,000 contacts from the blog, and that's just direct contacts. Somebody sending an email. I didn't have a way to track phone calls. There had to have been hundreds and hundreds of phone calls as well. So we're looking at generating 8,000 leads a year. And I remember at the end of 2011, or at the beginning of 2011, I set a goal to have 1 million unique visitors for the year. And I actually hit that goal late in December. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I did. I was pretty proud of myself at the end of 2011. I thought, wow, I have developed a blog that had 1 million people visit it in 1 year, which was really cool.
Yeah, that maybe is that the moment? I thought it was cool. Yeah, that's very. And is that the moment that stands out for you? That's kind of like, you're like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, it really was. Talking about organic, unpaid leads. You were not paying for any of this. This was all just your effort.
I never paid a dime. I never did pay-per-click. I work for Zillow now, and they know it. Everybody here knows it. Most people out there that know me know it. I never bought impressions from Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com. It was all organic search results.
Right.
And yeah, I think that moment where I pulled up Google Analytics and saw that 1 million number, that's where it really hit me. I thought, this has been crazy successful. And there was other moments before that. I got lots of speaking opportunities that were basically generated from the blog. It allowed us to open our brokerage. It allowed me to speak, and it allowed me to educate. I don't think I'd be sitting in this office at Zillow right now if it wasn't for that blog. In fact, I'm almost sure I wouldn't be.
We're going to get to that. I want to ask you one more question about,
sure.
We'll call it T-Preg, or the Phoenix real estate guy. There had to be part of it. I mean, I always look back at that time because I was able to watch that and kind of see this thing go. But how important was it to be in Phoenix at that time, and that environment that existed in Phoenix? Was that a big chunk of what helped you get to where you were able to take that?
That's a great question, and I think it had a lot to do with it. In the early days of blogging and of real estate blogging, which would have been 2005, 2006, I think you probably could have been successful just about anywhere. But as blogging started to pick up, which increases the competition, it becomes harder and harder. So, the whole Phoenix market at the time was just going nuts, crazy, right? This was 2006, 2007. Where appreciation rates were 50, 60% a year, new home subdivisions. They had people sleeping out at the sales offices to stand in line to buy lots, and people were buying new subdivision lots and flipping them in 30 days and making thousands of dollars. I mean, the market was going crazy. So I think that helped a lot, that there were people out there starving for information, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but 10 years ago, there was no Zillow, there was no Trulia, there was a Realtor.com, but the whole internet real estate vertical was really in its infancy. And I think being in a busy market like Phoenix was, plus it's a big market. I had lots of stuff I could write about, hundreds of subdivisions. I don't know that I could have been that successful if I'd lived in Ottumwa, Iowa, No offense to any Iowans that are listening.
All right.
So yeah, I think the market played a big difference. And of course the big crash came too, but that may have also helped in some ways because people are still looking for information.
Right. And you're just changing the content.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's, we move this up and into about right around 2012. Do you remember that first phone call from Zillow that was like, we want to talk to you about a position?
I remember it very well. And I think it's a kind of a cool story. I wrote about Zillow frequently on my blog from the day they launched at the time, now. So from 2006 on, I wrote about Zillow frequently, as many of the early real estate bloggers did, because Zillow was in the news a lot. And invariably, and I was always, this is long before I worked at Zillow, I was very pro syndication, pro listing distribution. I remember the first day I saw Zillow, I just thought, this is so freaking cool what they're doing. So, I mean, I wasn't necessarily a Zillow cheerleader, but most of my posts were, I guess if you had to categorize them, they were positive towards Zillow. And almost every time I wrote a post about Zillow, Spencer Raskoff, who's currently the CEO, at the time, I think he might have been the COO, I don't know. But Spencer, being a social person or on social media, would always thank me for writing a post about Zillow, usually via direct message on Twitter. And if you remember, at the beginning of 2012, Bob Bemis, who at the time was Armless CEO, right? He was the CEO of My MLS, got a job at Zillow. And so I did what I always did with that kind of thing, and I did a little interview with Bob when it was announced that he was leaving. And I never heard from Spencer or anybody at Zillow, which I didn't care about. That's not why I wrote Zillow content. But it was probably around maybe a month after I wrote that, I got a message from Spencer, and he said, gosh, I feel bad because I never thanked you for that post about Bob Bemis. And I replied back immediately. I said, don't worry about it, Spencer. It's not why I wrote it, but I appreciate it. And he messaged me right back, and he said, you should come to Seattle and join the fun. And I turned and I looked at Francie, and I pointed to that Twitter message, and I said, what does that mean, come to Seattle and join the fun? And she said, I think it means he wants to offer you a job. And so I tweeted back to Spencer. I just tweeted, don't tempt me, with a smiley face. And within a few minutes, the phone rang. And it was Spencer's admin who wanted to set me up for a visit to Seattle. She said, Spencer wants to bring you up here and talk to you. So I looked again at Francie, and I'm like, what do I do? And she's like, go talk to him. I figured, what would it hurt, right?
Wow.
So I did. Flew up to Seattle the next week. I thought it was just going to be me and Spencer, I don't know, talking about what. And when I stepped into the lobby at Zillow, somebody from HR came out and they said, here's your interview schedule. I looked down at it, and there's 7 or 8 people on there. There's vice presidents, there's Spencer, there's one of the co-founders that I'm going to talk to. And I was like, holy cow, this is a full-blown job interview that I have done zero preparation for. But it was amazing. I got a tour of the facility, and I fell in love with it. I was like a kid in a candy store, because you know me, I'm a tech guy at heart. I'm a bit of a geek and a nerd, and I'm walking around these floors at Zillow, looking at people coding and doing all this cool technology stuff, and the environment was awesome. The views from the office are amazing. I instantly fell in love with Seattle. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I don't know, what am I going to do if they offer me a job? I've got a brokerage that I own. I've got, at the time, I think we had 27 agents. So I've got 27 people I got to look out for, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And it happened really fast. Within a few weeks, I got a job offer. There was a little bit of a negotiation going back and forth, not much, and I accepted. And told all our agents that I'd gotten a job at Zillow. And at the time, we had this grand plan. My youngest child was about to graduate from high school. She had a scholarship to go to Arizona State, so we thought Francie will stay in Arizona while Lauren goes to school, and she can run the brokerage, and I'll go up to Seattle and work for Zillow. I knew I was going to travel a lot, and I would just swing by Phoenix or fly Francie up for the weekends or whatever. And that worked out okay for about 4 to 6 months, and my wife and I adored each other, and it was like living in a long-distance relationship. I missed her terribly, and I said, this isn't going to work. I can't do this for 4 years. This being not have her with me all the time. And we thought, well, we can either shut the brokerage down, or we can sell it, or we can merge it with somebody else. Let's figure out what to do. And by some incredible stroke of luck or fate or whatever it is, I was at some event, and Glenn Sanford, who's the CEO of eXp Realty, approached me at that event. This is just a few days after Francie and I had said, we got to do something different. And Glenn looks at me and he goes, have you ever thought about merging your brokerage with somebody else? And I was shocked, and I said, let's go over in a corner and talk. And we did, and so a few months later, we merged Thompson's Realty with eXp Realty. And that got Francie up here most of the time.
Right, that's great. Well, you early in your career at Zillow, that first year, because I was attending a lot of conferences, man, you were everywhere. How much time did you spend on the road that first year with Zillow?
That first year, probably at least 2 weeks out of every month, 50 to 75% travel.
Right.
Easily.
And now it's kind of changed. Kind of based in Seattle now, there's a few bigger events. It looks like maybe Zillow's kind of changed the philosophy of some of the sponsoring opportunities or some of the events, right?
Yeah, well, probably the biggest thing that impacted my personal business travel schedule with Zillow was we started hosting our own agent events across the country. And at the beginning, I went to most of those. I hosted most of them, or a lot of them. And as that became more and more successful and grew, we realized that we needed a team to handle this kind of thing. So, we had no event coordinators. We had no designated trainers or speakers. We were just kind of shooting from the hip in the beginning, and we built a honest to goodness world-class event planning team. Hired some people to go out and host and manage these events, and now we've got, I don't know the numbers, I probably shouldn't share them even if I knew them, but we've got probably, 5 or 6 event people and a dozen or so sales group people that go out and do most of our agent events.
Okay.
So that cut down the travel a lot.
Excellent. And you, for anyone that's a realtor listening to this podcast, you handle a ton, and now I'll use that word lightly, a ton of comments that pop up in numerous forums around the web. And it's generally someone upset with something about Zillow, and your job, one of the important roles you have at Zillow is to kind of handle those conversations. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yep.
Good.
Correct.
There must be a favorite or one or two of those you can share without getting in trouble.
Gosh, there's so many. People ask me all the time. They say, they don't ask me. They tell me. They say, I don't know how you do what you do, because there is a fair amount of vitriol that's spewed out there. But it's not as bad as it probably seems to the external eye. The amount of vitriol has decreased, I think, significantly over the last couple of years. But it's out there. Some classic comments. I've had, I had a heart attack 3 weeks after I started at Zillow. That's a whole nother story. But it was probably 6 months after the heart attack where I got an email message. It was clearly a fake email address. I think it was like zillowsucks@gmail.com or something like that. And it was unbelievably hateful. Somebody told me that they said, why don't you do us all a favor and have another heart attack? Now I can't really call that a favorite comment.
Wow.
But wow is usually the response that most people get when they see it. That kind of nonsense really doesn't happen very often. Usually what I hear is, Jay, you're a good guy, but, and I'm okay with that. Gosh, there's so many comments. I don't know that I can think of a favorite. What I really like is when there's open online discussions. Like, for example, it just happened a couple of days ago in some Facebook group. Somebody posted, hey, I'm thinking about buying advertising with Zillow. What do you think? The very first comment that somebody left on that Facebook group, was, I love it. I get a I think they said 6 or 7 times ROI. So for every dollar they spend with Zillow, they get $6 or $7 back in commission income. They were wildly successful with it. And that just kind of made me smile. So I clicked the like button. And the next comment, of course, was don't do it. Zillow's evil. And that kind of brings the haters out. And there was a lot of that. But for almost for every one of those saying don't do it, there was somebody else saying that they were successful with it. And I was thinking about this just the other day, and I thought, you know what, 3 or 4 years ago, you didn't see that. You didn't see people coming to the defense of Zillow, for lack of a better term, or at least talking about their successes. And it's kind of an interesting shift. So I love the positive comments. I don't sweat the negative stuff. Most of the negative comments, and this is just, I'm being open and honest, most of the negative comments that I see from Zillow come from people that don't understand what we do. And here's a perfect example. There was a guy that was not a fan of Zillow for years. And he came out in one comment someday, I don't remember what he said, but it was clear that he had, honestly, he had no clue about our advertising products, the services that we offer agents and brokers, none of that. And so I guess I kind of called him out. And I said, I got to make up a name. Steve. I said, Steve, I don't believe you have an understanding of what it is that we do. And he replied immediately back, and he said, you're right, I have no clue what Zillow does. And that floored me. I'm like, this guy has been spouting some negative stuff about Zillow from before I started working at Zillow, and he just publicly admitted that he has no clue what we do. Well, if you have no clue, how can you hate? It blows me away. But you know what? I have not seen a single negative comment from that person since then. I think he realized, you know what? I really don't understand what it is that these guys do or how they work, so I really can't say what my opinion is because I really shouldn't have an opinion, right?
Right, absolutely. Wow. Well, I won't put you on the spot and ask you about what's coming next with Zillow. I'm pretty sure the answer will be, well, we can't really talk about that. But let's go back a little bit in time one more time. And I know as a volunteer who works closely with the Ignite Phoenix team, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, just go to YouTube and type in Ignite Phoenix. You presented at this event not just once, but twice. And so I want you to tell everyone in the audience what your first topic was, and then tell us what your second topic was.
I love it. And I am a huge Ignite fan, particularly Ignite Phoenix. I think Ignite is a worldwide thing, but I think Phoenix has probably done it better than anybody else. You are partly to blame for my first topic, because you were at Ignite 7?
8.
8,
yeah.
Talking about Barbara. And this was submission time for Ignite 10. And you bugged me and you said, Jay, you should do this, you'll love it. And I'm like, I don't know what to talk about. And for those that don't know Ignite, the whole thing is talk about your passion, something that you're passionate about and interested in. And I think kind of half jokingly said, well, and you were telling me that, what are you passionate about? And I said, you know what, I'm hungry and I want some fast food. And that's what I'm passionate about, is I love fast food. And you and I kind of looked at each other, and I think I had this little light bulb moment. I thought, you know what, I really do love fast food. And you're kind of there too, right? I know. We made some trips to Wendy's and McDonald's. And so I thought, okay, this will be interesting. I'm going to submit for Ignite. And I called my presentation, I titled it Better Living Through Fast Food. And it went really, really well. It was Ignite is an amazing thing. It's amazing. I was in front of 750, 800 people talking about fast food and how it's and the advantages of it, which just seems kind of silly. And part of it was kind of silly, but it's kind of the whole spirit of Ignite, right? Maybe kind of silly, but it was something I was interested in. And I think I made some good points. I'm like, you know what, there's some advantages to fast food. It's consistent. I went on a trip to China and was able to have a hamburger at McDonald's that tasted just like it does in Gilbert, Arizona. So that was all great. Got lots of feedback from it. A couple days later, I was actually pumping gas in my car, and somebody pulls up and they go, "Hey, aren't you that fast food dude?" And I was thinking, no, actually, I'm the Phoenix real estate guy, but now I've been associated with fast food. So anyway, it was really cool. And okay, so fast forward, I believe it was 16 months from that presentation. And no, it was less than that, probably a year after that, I had the previously mentioned heart attack. So, and it was, I mean, there's no, I don't believe there are any insignificant heart attacks, but this was a major one. If you go to Google and Google widowmaker heart attack, that's the kind I had. It's just which coronary artery was blocked. I'm lucky I survived. I really am. I mean, and the reason I survived is because of some really fast, very high quality medical care. My cardiologist told me that if I'd waited 15 minutes or 20 minutes to call 911, I wouldn't have survived. So it was a big deal. So it wasn't long after that I got to thinking, well, this could be an interesting story. So I immediately started losing weight. I did some lifestyle changes because I didn't want to ever go through that experience of having a heart attack again. And then Ignite rolled around, and I thought, I should bookend these presentations. I did not, a year and a half ago, I did Better Living Through Fast Food. So what if I did another Ignite presentation about surviving a heart attack and what I did after that? So I submitted another speaking proposal to Ignite, and the title was From Fast Food Junkie to Heart Attack Survivor. Also a well-received presentation, very different from the first one. The first one was kind of fun and lots of laughs. The second one was not as much comedy, because it's hard to be funny when you're talking about almost dying. But right. It was a really, really interesting experience, and it was kind of 180-degree different presentations, yet still connected. So it was really cool.
That's great, and both of those are available on YouTube. Just simply type in those titles of the talks, and you'll find them. They were awesome. So
or you Google Ignite Phoenix Jay Thompson, and they'll both pop up.
Well, we've gone on about a half an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here with just one last question for you, and that's, I always want to make sure I'm going to talk to a lot of real estate industry, leaders and top thinkers, and so I'm going to ask you a kind of a tough question, but you've had one piece of advice for a realtor today in the world that we live in today. What's that piece of advice you would leave?
Buy Zillow advertising. Just
all right. How about your second piece of information?
That's a tough question. I'm going to have to say, I hope this doesn't sound petty. Answer your phone. Honest to goodness. I see lots of data, and I talk to lots and lots of agents, both those that do advertise with us and those that don't. And I am, to this day, blown away by the number of agents that don't answer their phone when a lead calls. We have every online site, Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Homes, agent sites, franchise sites. When internet leads come into agents, it's phenomenal how many of those are blown off, or people think internet leads are garbage, or whatever it is that they're too busy to answer, or whatever. Unresponded to leads just doesn't make any sense to me. Pick up your phone and call people. Do something with email. Make contact. I used to give my own agents that advice. They'd come to me and say, "What can I do to increase my business?" I'm like, "Answer your phone." And that's not a very good answer to a thinker's type of question, but if an agent really wants to be successful, that's what they need to do. And so some successful agent, hopefully, is out there listening, going, "I answer my phone every time it rings," and good for you. What can they do? I don't want this to sound like company speak, because it's honestly not. The real estate universe is changing, okay? I don't think, and executives at Zillow strongly do not believe that real estate agents will be replaced by a website. But there's no question that technology is changing how real estate is done, and agents need to understand that they are no longer the keepers of the data. They're not the gatekeepers of the data. The data is out there. Data wants to be free, okay? And the internet frees data, and consumers love it. Agents need to understand their role has shifted from a data provider to a data interpreter, okay? They're the professionals. They need to help consumers interpret all that data that they're getting. And that's a huge opportunity that so many agents don't take advantage of. Understand the data that's out there, understand how all these sites that consumers are visiting work, and help those consumers manage and get through all that data and help them through the transaction process.
You know what, Jay, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, in my role that I talk to agents all the time, and it's kind of mind-blowing how many don't grasp that fact that everybody can find what they kind of want to find, but they need somebody to put it all together. And that's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jay, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I know we definitely got to let you. I know you got to get back online. We know that's where you live, and thank you so much for being the first guest at what we hope is many guests at the Real Estate Sessions podcast. And thanks again. And we will see you on Facebook. All right.
All right. Well, bring me back for the 100th episode.
I'll do that. Thanks, Jay. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Good. Great talking to you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Sessions with Bill Risser of Chicago Title, Arizona. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and tell your friends about the Real Estate Sessions, as new episodes are published weekly.